All right. Bruce Neal Smith, drummer extraordinaire. I mean, I don't even know if you need an introduction based on all of the bands that you've participated in over the last several decades, but thank you for being on the Heart Dealer podcast.
You're welcome. Pleasure.
Um, well, let's just start off by going backwards. So you're born in California, and then eventually moved to the UK. How old were you when you made the transition?
I'm about six.
And UK wise, you were there for school. At what point did you, I guess, finish school and then move back to America?
Oh, that was something. I lived in the UK. Yeah, and I went. All my formal schooling was there, and then I began my music career in my teenage years in the city of Bristol where I lived,
Yeah.
and then I moved probably to London in about, I don't know, 1980-ish, 79, 80, something around there, and then I lived in London for 15, 16 years before I moved to New York. Yeah. Um,
So remind me, your father, obviously a well-known artist as
mm,
well.
mm.
Um, you were born in California. Is he originally American or was he
Yes,
also?
absolutely. He was born in Sturgis, Michigan.
So what
Yeah.
was it like growing up in this? I mean, yes, a house of artistry, but with this duality of American British upbringing.
Well, it's a good question. And I can sort of summarize it fairly well. I certainly felt, as a boy in England, felt a bit of an outsider. That's for sure. It was a big
Mhm.
change. We had been living in Los Angeles, and move to Bristol. And England in those days, it has changed a lot there in the last few decades.
Yeah.
It felt very different, and um, I, there's a memory that I have which I'll describe to you, which summarizes it. So, as a little kid, I'm I'd be at if I was invited to a friend's house, so I'd be invited over there, and I'd get there, and then almost invariably I'd be asked to wait in like the sort of parlor room while they were finishing their dinner or whatever it was. And so I would sort of sit there waiting until my friend showed up, and either we were going somewhere, or we were gonna do whatever it was. Um, when kids came to my house,
Mhm.
they would come in, and if it was around dinner time or whatever it was, my parents would bring them in, and they'd say, "Oh, come in, so come in, sit down. You hungry? Want to eat something?" They would immediately just include them.
Mhm.
And some of my friends they loved coming to my house because the atmosphere in the home was quite different from the atmosphere in their own homes. And this is just a cultural thing.
Right.
I'm making only an observation. I'm not making any criticisms. It's an observation, Chris, about the difference, how different it was in my own house from most of what I was surrounded by at that point. Yeah, exactly. It took a little getting used to.
For others,
Yeah.
not you.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, living in England, you know what I mean? And perhaps the kind of I started playing the drums as when I was about 7. I played the snare drum in the school band, but I think that it's possible that, feeling, something of an outsider. One of my closest friends as a boy was, he was from a West Indian family. So we were both kind of outsiders in a way. Actually, that got Claude Williams. He was part of the Wild Bunch, and the Wild Bunch went on to be Massive Attack. Yeah, and he actually, along with a couple of other kids who, we're all the same age. They were that was their crew.
That's really interesting. I mean, you probably have a million interesting anecdotes. Your upbringing, it sounds like it was loving and it was warm, and is that something that your parents infused in you, imparted on you?
Yes, I would say absolutely it is. Yeah, again, there was a huge importance on everybody showing up to have dinner together, you know,
Mhm.
um, not eating in isolated parts of the house. And of course, this is many, many years before cell phones. Um, or to be honest with you, I mean, when we lived in LA, we didn't have a TV. Then when we moved to England, we did have a television. We did have a TV, but, again, in England, the TV, especially at that time, I mean, it was pretty limited. There was really
Mhm.
only there was BBC. I think there were 2 stations, 2 yeah, I mean, I think there was just the BBC, if I remember rightly when we started. I don't along there, somewhere along there, the independent, network started, but
Yeah,
it was extremely limited. And and weird. Have you ever heard of the Magic Roundabout?
I have
So
not, no.
yeah, okay, you wouldn't have done. The Magic Roundabout was a kids show that came on just before the 6 o'clock news, and it was stop time animation, Chris. You can look it up at some point. It is extraordinary and quite odd. Um, the characters were quite odd. I'm pretty sure that the people who wrote it had probably been, eating mushrooms or doing LSD when they wrote it, because it was very, very far out. And that was like the cartoon show that would come on before the 6 o'clock news. It's quite something.
Yeah, fast forward 50, 60 years, and now the kids have so many distractions, they don't even know how to
Yeah,
make time for themselves, to
yeah.
go outside and play. Your dad obviously was, really successful and a really, really cool artist doing all kinds of stuff in the avant-garde. Um, did you it sounds like, or it seems like, from outside looking in, that you had a very solid relationship with him. Is that accurate?
I did. I mean, I think that my relationship with my father improved actually as he got older. I think he was perhaps a little unapproachable in some ways. When
Mhm.
he was a dedicated painter for sure, and also a dedicated father. And so when he would also he taught at UCLA, he taught at UC Berkeley. When we moved to England, he was teaching at the Bristol Polytechnic Fine Art. So supporting the family, as well as giving himself an opportunity to paint. So I think, but those, he did his best with what he'd learned from his own parents, and I think that generationally, my dad was born in 1915. He's no longer with us, of course, but so his own parents, his own upbringing, and this is something I've now come to appreciate. You know, they didn't really have a lot of time for, "Oh, I'm feeling bad about this. I'm feeling," well, you know what? Figure it out. That
Yeah.
was something to do generationally, and I think I hopefully my own son, I've tried to make myself more build a dialogue and be able to be available to him in a way that perhaps my father didn't know how to be. I'm gonna say that, as opposed to didn't wanna be. He just probably just didn't know how to do that. And so, but I think over time, as he was a little older, he became more approachable in a way. Yeah.
I have a similar experience, and
Mm,
it's funny you mentioned that don't know how. I think that that's generationally true, and
mm.
we're slowly moving into a time where we can talk more openly about our feelings, about our negative experiences of our lives. My dad once told me, like, when I was younger, "Don't compare yourself to me. You're never gonna be successful like me." And it hit me really negatively at the time, but
Wow.
as you mentioned, like, they got older, they got more approachable, they got more sensitive. Over time, I realized what he was trying to say was, "Don't worry about how you compare to me, worry about how you compare to yourself. Be your own man, find your own path and your own future." And it sounds like you've done that same thing because you had all this, artistry and stuff around your house, but then you, as you said, picked up the drums at age or sticks at age 7, and then went
So
on this incredible path of your own.
yeah, I mean, I can when I guess I was in my early 30s, and uh, I had stopped touring. I'd been touring extensively for a few years with Public Image, and then I stopped touring.
Mhm.
And I was in London, and the reason I stopped touring was because, well, I had a fairly major drug problem, and so I wanted to deal with that. That took a few more years to deal with, but when I eventually did deal with it in 1992, um, in those years after that, I was doing a lot of different music things. I was actually writing and producing music for some TV stuff, some commercials, things like that. And I remember one afternoon I was visiting my parents, and I was perhaps playing something that I'd worked on, and we listened to it, and Hassel, my dad, he said to me, "Yeah," he said, "Bruce, it's great. Yeah, it's great. You're making some money. That's good. That's good. That's good. That's good." He said, "But let's not confuse ourselves. You're working to a spec that someone's provided for you.
Mhm.
This is not, this is not original art." And 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 I know that him speaking to me, that is, I know from what you already done in your past, the pop group and so and so, Public Image, that you are more than capable of that. So don't lose sight of that. And that was really a profound thing, because it did, it, you know, it did keep me, he kept that principle in mind for me, that actually, uh, when one has the ability and the drive to do something, to create work that's original and really is going to stand out because of its originality and essential creativity, then you're kind of obliged to do it. You can't give up on that. And it's a, there are people out there who have careers in the arts and music who are probably quite successful, but probably not terribly original. And they would
Yeah.
probably just be dying to have that. And on the other side of it is, like, I look over at them and think, oh, and they're making all this money and shit. They want the credibility I have, so on and so forth. I mean, in over time, what I'm saying, what I'm saying is, it really became clear to me that actually, yeah, I have a responsibility to that. Do you understand? To that principle. I have a
Mhm.
responsibility to that principle.
I mean,
And I
you're
think I've
wearing the
tried to do
hat, it's
it.
art. A lot of people that I've spoken with so far, in fact, I should say most of them have said it's art for art's sake, right? And if you're not picking up the drumstick for the sake of picking up the drumstick, then you should probably do something else.
Yeah. Yep.
How, speaking of drumming, you've been in multiple bands, you're still in bands, you've done session work. I'm sure there's more and more and more. How often do you still practice and perform? Like, what's your routine like? Is it just easy now and you don't have to worry about it, or do you still give it every single day?
No, I don't play every single day. It sort of goes in sort of bouts.
Mhm,
Um, I do, these days, there's a lot of, in this particular band that I'm in right now, neither Paul or Daniel have any sort of computer skills at all, and I do. Um, I I embraced the use of machines in music pretty early on.
mhm,
I can tell you a little anecdote in a minute as to the first time that I was in a recording session playing with a drum machine. Uh, but and so, yeah, I'm completely at ease using a computer. So on a daily basis, making music these days, we use a lot in the computer.
mhm.
However, I am still fully committed to, even if I'm not playing the drum part, I write it like I'm playing it. I always think about, okay, how is this, which isn't to say that the machines themselves don't lend themselves to create something that is extraordinary because a human being can't play it. But I do like to approach it from the perspective of being able to think about it being played. So my kind of sitting down, playing the drums is something that kind of sometimes, yeah, I'm playing all the time, and then other periods I'm more writing and arranging and producing stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
that's actually my bad for not thinking further outside the box, that with all the technological advance we have, being someone who's into percussion and just sounds in general, that just because 'cause you're not playing, that doesn't mean you're not creating. You're using the machine to make beats effectively on the days that maybe you're not drumming.
yeah, they're very different things. but you're still kind of touching, you're still inhabiting, you're still kind of touching the instrument, so to speak, and keeping one's sort of consciousness there with music, which for me is, when I'm in the New York City, I never wear headphones because there's so much inspiration going on around. And I see all these people who are in the street and so in their little world, they got the headphones on. There's so much to listen to. It's incredible. And the syncopation in split seconds between some passing piece of music and maybe a musician on the street, or the way that, it's amazing. And I get all kinds of ideas from the way in which sound integrates, when you're in the city. It's incredible.
Inspiration through city sounds?
Yeah, for sure.
If
Yeah.
I mean, if you had to associate a sound with New York, what comes to mind? What
Huh.
genre?
What comes to mind initially? Um, well, apart from sirens. Well, I think yeah, um, there is the sort of the sound of the subway, the rattle
Mhm,
of the subway train is quite, but I think more than anything else, it's probably the drummers, because there's so much. The drummers who play on those paint cans in the subway are just killing it. And and then during the summer, there's and so it's between music you're hearing, and then people playing in the park or on the street or whatever. There's
mhm.
al- y- y- there's always a beat coming from somewhere. Always.
I think of New York. I've been a few times, and I think of New
Mhm.
York, and for some reason, I mean, obviously, you can't not think about hip hop, but I think of jazz. There's a lot
Uh-huh.
of sounds and noise and off kilter beats, which I mean, I guess there's a lot of similarities to post punk as well. Um, how do you stay creative after all these years? I mean, you can't just say you're walking around listening to the city sounds. So what are other
Uh-huh.
forms of inspirations
Yes,
for
of
you?
course. Yeah. I mean, but for me, ideas are just, it's a constant flow of ideas. I'm never short of ideas, and some work out, some don't. That's fine. I mean, I think part of the thing as you go on is to realize sometimes you have an idea and you start investigating it, and then you want to realize, yeah, maybe this is a bit of a rabbit hole. It's not really going to work out. Don't get too hung up on it. Again, I'll tell you a little bit about watching my father paint when I was younger. So I can remember being in the studio, and it was something he was working on, and then he was looking at it, and then he went over and he got uh the base, like whatever the base color he was using, and he just removed about 2/3 of what was on the canvas, just painted right over it, gone, just like that. And I remember talking about it at somewhere with him. He said, "Yeah, you've got to be brave enough to know this isn't working and it's got to go. I've got to do it. Either I've got to do it again, or I've just got to get rid of it to free my mind and allow the space for, other things to come into it." And what's really important about that, Chris, is that it doesn't matter how long you've spent doing it,
Mhm.
because you can trick yourself into thinking, well, it must be good because I've just spent, 5 days doing it. No, that's horseshit. It's only it's only good when it's good. And you
Yeah.
could have spent 5 seconds doing it. The amount of time that it took you to get to that point. So you need to be brave enough to know, yeah, whatever this is got to go. And I've certainly done that. There's a couple of tracks on the Ashes and Diamonds record where we, having written it, and we sketched it out with music and the vocal, and then we actually took everything away, everything we'd recorded, and with just the vocal, and came back at it from another way, from another place altogether. Um, And, amazing things happen when you're prepared to do that.
You're absolutely right. I mean, that you I work with so many younger artists, and so many of them, do the math and say, "I put in all this effort, I put in all this time, I put in this money, we've got all these things. Why is that album not doing well?" And it might not be any of those things. It might just not be. It might be the music, it might be the timing. You have to just keep going
Yeah.
regardless of the success.
Yeah. Yeah. And the time that it takes to create a pi look, I have friends who are in the movie business. I can think of a couple of people, you know, there's things that they took them several years, 8, 9 years before they they got the movie made and got it out. Nobody sits there and thinks, well, it took them, it's either good or it isn't. That's it. You either walk out thinking, wow, that was great and it touched me. And, I'd say listening to a piece of music, nobody cares how long it took you to do it.
Yeah.
Whether it was, as I say, long or short, it's totally irrelevant. So sometimes you might hit that kind of creative stream and do something that lasts, just like that. It's not, it, it's not something I'm too concerned about as to as to
Yeah. It's nice being able to end on a high note, to know when to walk away as opposed to the TV series that just keep going on and on for no
well,
reason.
well, that's money. They keep
This
doing it because it's popular. So okay, let's make another one. How can we keep people watching? Yeah,
Well, at that point, art ceases to be art and it starts to be just a business.
yeah.
What was like a really can you think of a really foundational moment in your musical career where you took those words, that advice from your dad, and said, "You know what? I'm walking away from this because it doesn't make sense to push down that path anymore."
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I'm more than one occasion, yeah, working on something and then realizing, okay, this is this isn't. I gotta either just completely start again or that
Mhm,
these couple of things that's working in this arrangement. Everything else got to go. Um, uh, and once you have that feeling, you also have to have the confidence in oneself that you can whatever you're going to do is that you can get there to that you can get to that place where you're hearing something that is exciting. I mean,
mhm,
I think that you know, there's the caveat to what we're talking about is that the artist needs to not be afraid of editing themselves and being their own critic and realizing, yeah, this is okay, but I'm not there yet. You know,
mhm,
unfortunately, I think that I wonder whether, and I'm just throwing this out there, I wonder whether in this time that we're in, because of the access through the availability through the internet, at least for releasing music, um, because in the past, of course, there were gatekeepers, and those were the record companies, right? Small or large, they were the gatekeepers, and you had to go through a system which not entirely fair all the time for sure to get that record released.
mhm,
Um, Now in some cases, quite a few in fact, the people running those labels knew how to make good records. They knew what constituted a really good record. And I think that now, without those gatekeepers there, and again, this is a comment. I'm not saying we should have the gatekeepers. I'm not, because there's something to be said for people having access to release things, and get them out there into the world. However, what I'm talking about is that you don't necessarily have which is that other person. Perhaps you say to the young artist, yeah, this soon, it's pretty good, but we need to keep working, because you're
mhm,
in this role of knowing they do have what it takes, but they're not quite there yet. And then hopefully them starting to realize that in themselves. Yeah, I'm not quite there yet. I mean, I think there's, in music, that collaboration is so huge, in my opinion, that goes towards making really great music, if not just least of all the simple act of people playing together, but between those producing and so on and so forth. And now I can do the entire thing in this computer that I am sitting here talking to you on. The entire thing. I don't actually need to interact with anybody. And there's probably been I've probably heard some pretty great records that have been made in that way. But I gotta say, I still think there's a lot, a lot more to be gained from collaboration. You know what I mean? Which
I
is,
I I agree with you. Artistic
yeah,
collaboration is so important. I mean, like, even in the business with what I'm doing, working with other partners and with my teams, we get a stronger product when we're talking to each other openly about the idea and someone says, "Well, this is not bad, but it could be stronger this way." I like what you're saying that with all the tools and the advent of all the different technological advancements in music, there's almost like a flood of content, but no one is really quality controlling a lot of that product. But I'm hoping that what we're going to see is with more open dialogue, with more, comfortability, comfort having direct conversation, we're going to see a boom, like a renaissance in art, right? Because more and more people are comfortable creating, and hopefully more people will be comfortable talking about the creation and strength and weaknesses thereof, and we will then get a almost like a curve the other way now, saying like there's more content and there's more quality
mm,
content.
mm,
But
mm,
that's an important fact. It's not just about getting it done and getting it out. It's
yeah.
it's about sitting on it the right amount of time, letting it cook, and trying to release something of quality. So
But I think
you
if you, which I think many young artists now, and they're in this sort of it's a lifestyle, isn't it? And they're constantly putting stuff online and uh uh you know on a daily basis, they're posting stuff and so on and so forth. Um and I that process I think does tend to accelerate. So, oh yeah, I've got this thing, I've got to get it out there and da, 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 but actually that I think is it that I don't I'm not really sure that that's valid. I understand there once you're in that cycle, I understand why it happens, but I don't really again if you take a little longer to make sure that it's something that you really are confident about. In some ways, I think people are constantly slinging stuff out there to get a response, right?
yeah,
Oh, what do they think of this one? Oh, what do they think of that one? Yeah. How many likes did that one get? You understand what I'm saying?
yeah,
I can,
definitely.
and then, oh, well, that one worked out. So maybe I'll do more of that. I mean, there's certainly that dynamic is without question a big part of it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. In 2025, son of a painter, having gone through such a crazy musical career, I wanted to ask about the hat. Like, what does art mean for you now? What is art in 2025?
Wow. Well, that's a big question, Chris. Um, I should, what? I should name check the guys who made this. These guys are a kind of collective of French African. They call themselves Art Comes First. That is the name of their collective.
Yep.
And when I saw this hat that they were, I thought, oh, I got to have one of those. That's so good. Yeah, and they're very creative. Really, really, they have the whole scene going on. Um, well, I mean, I don't know that I don't have the ability to particularly answer that question that you've just asked because there's so much that goes into that, and I certainly myself, I do, um, I can appreciate what we call what's described as art in so many different ways. I mean, in that the some people's just their lives alone is like an artistic expression. They're just the way they are as individuals.
Mhm.
Um, so, uh, um, and that perhaps is the cornerstone of it is that you're not trying to second guess and would kind of a bit what we were just talking about, how well liked is this or how well liked is that. um I saw, just on the subject, I've just got, I saw, there's a DJ, young DJ, he calls himself Eve's Tumor, as tumor, as in
Yeah,
and he recently had opened up for a quite a commercial DJ outfit called the Swedish House Mafia.
yeah,
And this was it was part of the tennis or something. Anyway, something I saw online. So this guy who is pretty rad in the music and stuff he does, I mean, he really is. He's pretty edgy. He gets on as the warm-up act and proceeds to like literally bombard the audience. I mean, it was way cool with just like circuit bending noise, you know. There wasn't a kind of continuous drum beat or mix in sight. Not that he can't do it, because I've heard, you know, he can. He chose to make this kind of statement, I guess, and artistic kind of statement. And I mean, largely, I think the audience were booing, which, you know, I don't think bothered him at all. I thought it was great. I mean, I really thought it was great because, as opposed to simply delivering what, you know, he was expected to do as the warm-up DJ. Do you know what I'm saying?
mhm,
He really completely turned it on its head. Good for him.
yeah.
And I think if you've got, you know, you know, that's I'm not, I have no idea where it takes him, but in that moment, good for him. I thought it was great.
I
Eve
love that
too.
anecdote. I
Yeah,
Eve Stewart. I love the anecdote, and I think it ties into the hat, and ironically, what's on the back of the hat, right?
right.
It starts with art or music.
Yeah,
Art is first. I feel like it's just a feeling. I feel like it's just a vibration, and ironically, you, with Ashes and Diamonds, I didn't know this until I started to research it more, but this is a project that's been in the works for, like, 7 years, and you and the guys seem like this is some of the best stuff that you've ever done, and you're very proud of it, and it wasn't
mm.
about rushing to get it out or pausing unpausing because of different global circumstances, but it was about doing what felt right, the feeling.
Yeah. I mean, and the time again, the time that it took to get it out is totally irrelevant. It was circumstantial.
Yeah.
COVID, yada yada yada. Um, but there was a key decision that we did make, which was we'd actually recorded all these songs in piecemeal, sending
Mhm.
files from the West Coast to the East Coast and so on and so forth. And then we elected in the spring of 2022 to I think it was 2022. Was it 20? Yeah, 22. We re-recorded everything. Maybe it was 23. I can't remember. Maybe it was 23. Uh, and we went into the studio in Los Angeles and we recorded 12 tracks in like a week. Um, and that really made a huge difference to the way that recording sounds because it meant that we got in there, played, collaborated. Yes, we already had the bulk of the arrangements, but the songs took on a whole other life. And the great thing about that was that you know we kind of had lived with them and we knew them, and you know it's you don't often get that opportunity making records, you know,
Yeah.
especially in this day and age because um, you know, there's a lot of pressure financially and so on and so forth. So it was kind of it was quite a special thing to be able to then to recut the material and feel like it was actually fully realized. Um, and you know, I made a lot of different records, some that have been you know recorded and done in you know an afternoon, others that have spanned over a period of time. You know, one isn't necessarily better than the other. Um, but what is for sure is that if you do make something in the space of an afternoon, if you're depending on the people involved, you might
Mhm.
really catch something that's unrepeatable and is an incredible moment of time. And we've heard those. We really have. We've heard plenty of things like that. But the other side of that is that some of the other great records you've heard and I've heard were also made in the afternoon. But the preparation that went
Mhm.
into before that recording was made You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Was extensive. And
yeah.
then you go in and boom, record it one time, and hopefully you capture something that's going on between the players. But the preparation is what I think helps to allow that to happen, you know?
Yeah, that's a really valid point because a race is over like this, but the years of training to get to the
You
race and be
got it.
ready for the race
That's right.
are so important.
Yeah.
Speaking of music, what's one piece of advice that you would love your younger self to have known about music, about the industry? What would you wish upon your early self to know?
My early self. Um, you know what? I think I was too self-conscious when I was younger. And I mentioned earlier that along the road there, I got over put a drug problem behind me, and
Mm,
actually through doing that, and then returning to playing live music and playing the experience that I then had was just so rewarding. Um, and I realized that actually, you know, the the it's an energetic thing that actually the more I get put of my true self, into that performance and so on and so forth, that the more not only do I get out of it, but the audience does too. And I think that as young people, we can be pretty self-involved. I
yeah.
certainly was. And and um and yeah, it might just be that, and I'm not sure if that has a lot to do with the music industry. You know what? I think it does too, because actually I think that, what we're talking about is also the key to some people, um, and it doesn't have, success on for young people in the music industry is something that only a handful of people really get to be honest with you. Um, and the closer you can find to be actually really, to to really the essence of who somebody is,
Mhm,
um, that's what people respond to. That's what's interesting about the what's happening with with some of the aspects of social media and the internet is actually some of the young stars. I see this now; they're so accessible to their audience. Gone are the days of any sort of shrouded in kind of contrived mystery. Do you know what I'm saying? Like
yeah,
at all. And I find that really interesting. Actually, I find it really interesting of how that the it's it the public, the fans of these people, and I think they genuinely feel very connected.
mhm.
Um, and I think that's quite a good thing. Actually, I think it's a good thing.
I agree.
Yeah.
You mentioned the drug problem a couple times. I love having honest conversations with people talking about difficult things. I've just come through a very difficult period in my life, 2 years of just tumult on so many different levels. Um, I'm curious, what motivated you? What kept you going? What was the thing that really kind of turned things around and said, "I'm gonna do right by myself and by others and kick this." What was your trick, your tool?
There's no trick. Um, Playing music
Hmm,
is a huge thing because, um, I even though, I'd spend a lot of time not sleeping, and but the importance of the music never escaped me. And so, um I'm not sure that was I mean, in some ways, I think that there was a kind of for me, a kind of just a real letting go, and a genuine, "Okay," like hands up kind of, "Hey, I tried it my way, it didn't work." I'm open to all suggestions, and I found through that a kind of kind of release actually of just and that that actually I think has allowed me to lead a much fuller life than I might have done otherwise. That's for sure. Yeah.
Accepting, failure almost, accepting the need for help?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And but failure's never failure because
Oh, yeah.
it's that's how if everything is just hunky dory all the time and you're just you know one success after another, it's we don't learn from our successes. We learn from our failures.
Absolutely. And my business partner always reminds me, "Fail hard, fail fast, Chris.
Yeah.
Fail hard, fail fast. Keep going."
Yeah.
The
And keep going. There you go.
Yeah, keep
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
That's another key.
Yeah.
What do you tell your kids now? What are the advice that you give your kids when
Keep going. Yeah, that's what I tell them. They get like okay, you gotta keep going. And I think that also what I also say to them is, look, okay, none of us can see what's going to happen next, but if you take a look back
uh,
and look, do you have any information to suggest to you that you're not going to be okay? What is there? Do you have something? Is there some actual factual information that says that right around that corner, it's all going to go, no. So, yeah, I tell him, so you got to keep going. You got to keep going. And my son's 25, and 26 rather. And he's recently out of, university and getting into the world and so on and so forth. But as a youngster, he was a very talented baseball player. And I remember when he was, in his I know he was the early teens, and the standard of the other kids had really gone up, and he was in the doldrums because he felt like he wasn't good enough. And I said, yeah, so you could quit or you could get better. And he got better. You know?
for
So,
him?
that's yeah, that's the point at which I think and the point at which any of us do that, it's not hopefully it's for ourselves. I mean, it's not, I'm not doing it so that you'll pat me on the head and so, oh, good for you. It's more like, no, because then I can rest easy in my bed knowing that I really have put in the effort to improve this thing that I love doing. Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate the honest conversation. The new album sounds incredible. There's a lot of amazing music to come. I know there's only 3 songs out now, but I've heard most of it. Um, I have 2 questions, one about the
Okay.
music and one more philosophical to end on.
Okay.
So, with the 2nd single, "Setting Yourself Up for Love,"
Mm.
I know that you might not have written the lyrics per se, but that you had a creative hand in most of this album. What is your opinion on how one sets oneself up for love?
What a great question. Well, we've been talking about a lot of it in many ways. Um, well, I think you need to be ready to receive. I mean, I think you need, ready to receive, and and be able to. I think that and probably more than anything else, some kind of acceptance that everybody's sort of stumbling along trying to figure their regardless of what age they are, you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
one of the things I think is so inspiring to me is when I meet people who are older than I am, who are still like little kids. They're still wide-eyed, and I kind of relate to that. I kind of the more you know, like, the less you know somehow, and the more fascinating the world and other people become. I'm more interested in other people than anything else, and what their lives are about. Um, but yeah, so I think it's that sort of willingness to receive, um, from others, uh, um and uh, and then, yeah, I mean, you said I certainly didn't write the lyric. It's Daniel entirely, and I will tell you one thing about that song. Actually,
Sure, go for it.
the basis of that song was an idea that I had with just the synthesizer and the drums. So I had hit on this synth loop that and the atmosphere of it was fantastic. It starts the track. It's what's at the beginning, and it's in during the track a lot of it. And then, I did the drums to go with, it, and I sent him just that. That's all I sent him. And I, it's in, I think it's in F. Yeah, it's all on it. That whole thing is on an F. And of course, what I heard was totally different from what he came up with. First of all, it's in F. What he wrote is in F major. Crazy. I mean, I think it might be the only tune on the album that is in a major key. Maybe there's one other, but and that was completely unexpected. And so this is an example of what we've been talking about. Not in any part of my imagination did I hear what he heard from that idea I had. I had all kinds of dark thoughts of, on the minor side of the key, and he came up with something which is still quite unsettling. Actually, it's not it's a beautiful song in a way. You know what I mean? It's a little bit unsettling because the way Daniel plays too never really allows you to feel that comfortable. And so yeah, it's really kind of a standout for me because it just came completely out of nowhere. It really did. Yeah.
It's funny how the perspective can shift, you're thinking minor and dark, and he puts a major on it, and all of a
Completely
sudden it's
different. Yeah. Yeah.
totally different.
Yeah.
You said something there that I'm gonna hold up the mirror because you
Okay.
said, "I love, meeting people who are older, who are still youthful, and I love the story of other people's." That's why I do this, and that's what I'm getting from you in this very conversation, you know what I mean?
Okay.
This is lovely, and I appreciate that. So I'll end with something
Okay.
philosophical. You can expand as much or as little as you want, but
All
in
right.
in preparing my notes, I kinda go all over. And that one of the things that struck me the most, and that's why I saved it for the end, was this quote you had about 100 weeks ago on Instagram. Uh, Julius Caesar, William Shakespeare, "There's a tide in the affairs of men,
Oh, wow.
which taken at the flood leads on to fortune." I don't wanna read the whole quote, but, tell me about that because it's such a beautiful quote. It's so heavy and light. It's inspiring. I wanted to understand who you were when you wrote that. Like, what is it for you?
Well, I mean, you understand that it's Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, that I was reminded of that by one of my brothers. Last year was a very our mother passed away last year, and there was various and I'm trying to. In fact, it's not really that important. I can't. I'm not entirely sure as to what the motivation was at the time, but that prompted me to be so struck by that quote. But it has become. It's extraordinary that you bring that up because when I hear it now, that's why perhaps Shakespeare is so extraordinary. What I'm what I'm thinking of in relation to it is probably completely different than whenever it was that I chose to put it online. Um, but I think what it refers to, if I'm correct, is the the ability to when in resisting the tide that sort of flows
Mhm.
within creativity, and sometimes that tide might not be what you anticipated, but
Yeah.
the important thing is understanding that that is the path, that is the direction that one's life is going in, and the choices that you have made to get there, some of which may have begun way back. Um, and so, and if you, through egocentricity, miss that opportunity, right? Because, oh, I want this and I want that, and it's not this, and it's, all of which can happen in our lives. Um, then I think that then you have, m- you're missing out on on something that makes life so extraordinary, and sadly, um, I think, I can think of a number of people who have not been able to do that.
Mhm.
Life isn't always going to be what you had hoped that it was going to be at any
Yeah.
particular point. But by letting go and catching that flood or that wave, whatever that might be, something else might happen in your life that may be much, much more rewarding than you had ever imagined previously. Yeah.
I I agree. I mean, we must take the current when it serves or
Yeah.
lose our ventures. It's,
Yeah.
go with the flow.
Yeah.
There's
An understanding of that. And sometimes that the clarity that one needs for those maybe sort of pops into you briefly, but are, I can certainly think of a couple of examples of that. And being able to recall how you feel in those moments of clarity and what is then in one's mind. It's really important, really important. Uh, yeah. Well, thank you for reminding me of that, Chris. That's really something. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bruce, you're an inspiring man. Your art, which you wear proudly on your head,
Oh,
is inspiring as well. I really appreciate your time and
thank you.
thank you for sharing some of your words, wisdom, and anecdotes.
Much appreciated. I wish you well.